Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for your time and for being here. The date is Wednesday, January 21st, and we are going to start our meeting with the Maryland Lottery Gaming Control Agency, a briefing and overview. So at this time, it is my pleasure to welcome up Maryland Lottery and Gaming Control Agency to provide us with a detailed overview of what is happening in the world of gaming. And we truly appreciate your time and your presentation. So please do start by doing self-introductions, and we will go from there.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Wilkins, Vice Chair Feldmark, and members of the Ways and Means Committee. My name is John Martin. I'm the Director of the Maryland Lottery and Gaming Control Agency. With me today, to my right, is our Deputy Director, Craig Lindsay. And to my left, our Director of Legislation and Policy, Jennifer Beskid.
Good morning.
So today we are going to go through a number of things that will give a very brief overview to our agency. Let me begin by positioning our oversight group, the Maryland Lottery and Gaming Control Commission, which is an independent advisory board. You see there it is made up of 7 members. We have public meetings on a monthly basis. January's meeting will be tomorrow at 10 a.m. Meetings are available to be viewed online, so we hope if your schedule allows, you or someone on your staff may be able to look at that meeting tomorrow. Give you some perspective on where we are in terms of our revenue streams going forward. Let's look back first before we look forward. Fiscal year 25, we had $2.633 billion in sales, $667 million in profit. The games, if you're not familiar with the Maryland Lottery in terms of its product lineup, we have draw, monitor, and jackpot games. We have 11 of those games over those categories. You see some of the names here. You see some of the logos below. And of course, you all hear about Mega Millions and Powerball, but there are a number of other games that are available on a daily basis. We also have the scratch-off lineup, lottery scratch-offs at over 50 active games at any given point in time. Prices range from $1 to $50, and prizes up to $5 million on a winning scratch-off. We have a category of games called Fast Play that are sort of a hybrid. It was launched in 2020. They are instant win games that are printed on the terminals and self-service machines at any of our 4,300 lottery retailers around the state. They play similarly to a scratch-off, and price points range from $1 to $30, and many of those games have progressive jackpots. A little more detail on where we were in fiscal 25, broken up by the categories of daily, draw, jackpot games, instant games, monitor games. And you can see here, hopefully some of you have this already at your laptop so you can see a little bit closer in terms of the sales and profit contributions for each of the product categories in fiscal 25. For comparison purposes, and you look at where we've been for the last several fiscal years, give you an update that at this point we are halfway through fiscal 26, and our year-to-date sales, year-over-year numbers, we are up 4.9%, and more importantly, our profit margin is up 7.9% year over year. So we fully anticipate that to continue in the second half of fiscal 26. Moving from our lottery business to our casino business, while we operate the lottery, we regulate casino and sports wagering, gambling in the state of Maryland. The 6 casinos you see here pictured geographically. And over the next series of slides, I'm going to share you a little profile of each of the properties. I'd ask, though, that you take a look. The order here is they are ranked by fiscal 25 revenue. But if you can look on the screen there, the date they were open, this will lead us to a further conversation later on in the presentation about the renewal cycle for our 6 casino properties. And they initially, when they came on board, in this case MGM in 2016, all the casinos received a 15-year license. So those casinos are now coming up for renewal. In this case, MGM's renewal will be in 2031. But we've already had 2 of the 6 properties been renewed because they've been in existence 15 years. So MGM National Harbor, the largest of the casinos, live casino at Arundel Mills, the Horseshoe in downtown Baltimore, Hollywood Perryville, and as you can see, our first casino opened in 2010, so it has already successfully completed its renewal process for the next 15 years. And Ocean Downs opened in 2011. It also has been approved for its renewal for 15 years. Rocky Gap, Western Maryland, of the 6 casinos. The revenues over, again, the last several fiscal years, as we look at the first half of fiscal 26 year to date, the revenue numbers are a little behind last year's pace. The revenue generated by the 6 casinos in the first half is down 1.8% year over year, and the contributions to the state down 1.5% year over year. We also regulate sports wagering in the state of Maryland. As of January, we have 11 retail brick-and-mortar sportsbook locations. We have 12 mobile sportsbooks. And at this point, I should note that these mobile sportsbooks, these 12 entities, plus the online fantasy competitions, and there are about 14 of those entities in the state, are the only legal online gambling options available in the state of Maryland. We'll talk more about that a little bit later on. Looking at what the contributions are from the sports wagering sector, summarizing just the last 2 fiscal years to give you some relative perspective. And again, looking at the first half of fiscal 26, our handle is already at over $3.5 billion. The prizes paid to players in the first half of 26 is over $3.1 billion. Our hold percent, which is the amount of money the sports wagers keep after they pay off prizes, is 11.9%, and the contributions to the state after the first 6 months are already $78.6 million from sports wagering. So you can see on all of those metrics, we're positioned to far exceed last year's fiscal 25 totals, and it's likely that we'll surpass our contributions to the state, the taxes that are generated from sports wagering, as early as next month, when February 10th we'll release our January 26 numbers, and I fully expect it to exceed the 88.9 on a year-to-date basis, but stay tuned for that. Problem gambling is a significant aspect of all that we do on both the lottery and the gaming side of our business. By statute, there are some casino operator provisions on amount of money that is generated for the problem gambling fund, as well as sports wagering prizes that have been expired that contribute to the fund. Maryland's per capita problem gambling funding is among the top 10 of all jurisdictions around the country. And it's important to note that the funds, while they're generated from sports wagering, is managed by, the disbursement of those funds is managed by the Maryland Department of Health. I mentioned about responsible gambling a little bit earlier, and it is something that's woven into the fabric of all that we do at Maryland Lottery on the lottery side as well as the gaming operations side. We provide a number of vehicles internally for training and education for our employees, as well as our retailer partners on the lottery side. We enforce all the gaming licensees, maintaining responsible gaming plans on both the casinos and sports wagering side. We operate a voluntary self-exclusion program, and we also have one of the founding companies in the Maryland Alliance for Responsible Gambling, MARG. I know some of you around the table are familiar with that, and that is a quarterly review with other valued partners around the state, other stakeholders in the gambling sector, making sure that we're all providing responsible gaming resources. When you look at where we are geographically and surrounded by other jurisdictions, Updated this slide to reflect the fact that really on all sides of the state, the contiguous states and jurisdictions are offering some aspect of enhanced gaming, not only in their brick and mortar facilities, but also in the online space. And so currently we're looking at a very competitive landscape when you look at the surrounding jurisdictions. At this time, it would be important to note that if you're familiar and have had a chance to read our joint chairman's report that was due in December, in that report, we stated that there is a proliferation of illegal, online, casino-style, and sweepstakes game offerings whose operators continue to find ways to expand both in the state of Maryland and nationally. It's a significant concern, not only for us, but all of our peer group jurisdictions around the country. You see some of the concerns we have here, that when you are looking at an illegal online gaming stream, no taxes being collected on gaming revenue, there's no interceptions of tax or state debts. It drives players away from legal operations like the entities that we oversee. There is a lack of identification, verification, and age determinations. Really don't have in place responsible gaming measures in the legal marketplace, and it fundamentally leads to a lack of consumer protection. So for all these reasons, we are seriously concerned about the rise of illegal online gaming activities. So what have we done about that? Well, some of you may remember last year we talked about it, and we have continued to grow our efforts in that area. We maintain information on the legal versus illegal gaming market on our page at the mdgaming.com website, where we list the license operators where you can place legal bets here in the state of Maryland online, as well as copies of cease and desist letters that we have sent to now over 75 illegal operators since May of 2024. 23 have agreed to leave or modify their games to make them legal. 17 have responded but have not moved forward, and 35 have not responded at all. And this is actually a fairly decent hit rate when you look at comparing ourselves to other entities, other jurisdictions around the country. They're showing similar types of success ratios as we see here. Certainly there's a lot of work yet to be done. There are new and improved competitors in the marketplace, prediction market operators certainly being one of those. And we are actively pursuing how we work with combating those efforts. And in November of 25, we notified all of our licensees, both on the casino and sports wagering front, that any involvement in prediction markets may impact their qualifications for future licensure in the state of Maryland. So looking at the current session, some of the things that are driving our motivation, we have 3 gaming bills. Jen's actively involved with all 3 of these. You see them on the screen. The first one is actually in response to an OLA audit where we have determined that we need to bring our gaming interception of debts to the same level that we had on the lottery side. So that's a quick address based on the OLA finding. We are also then looking at establishing regulations limiting the amount of free promotional play that sports wagering licensees may exclude from their taxable proceeds. That, again, we had some conversations last year, so we're furthering to solidify that. And then the final bill co-filed in both the House and the Senate side, as all of these are looking at clearly defining illegal internet-based gaming and giving the agency the authorization for penalties for operating such illegal gaming. So our current status, based on some projects from previous years to, more importantly, things that need to be involved, we need to be involved with this year. The ITLM, the Instant Ticket Lottery Machine, which initially began with veteran services organizations, has been expanded to include now fraternal organizations. So a request for proposals will be issued in the very near future. to get that implemented based on the House bill passing last year on online subscription purchases. We are going to begin offering that hopefully before the end of the calendar year, as soon as we can. We're in development of that add-on to our lottery side of the business. And then the third project that is of significance is our central systems contract, the nerve center that operates all of the lottery operations. That contract is up in 2027, so our request for proposal will be issued very soon on that front. I alluded to casino licensing before, and just to go back and get that information, as I said, we have 6 casinos. They all opened up between 2010 through 2016. The initial term was a 15-year lease. Renewals occur on a rolling basis based on those start dates. They're earlier in the presentation, so we have all those dates for all 6 properties. So within the last several months, the Maryland Lottery Gaming Control Commission, our oversight board, approved Hollywood Casino Perryville's license renewal on April 24th, 2025. And they also approved Ocean Downs Casino's license renewal on May 22nd, 2025, which leaves 4 casinos that were opened in 2012, 13, 14, and 16, coming up for their 15-year renewals. And so as applications are due at least a year, most of the properties will get very close to that year. I'm not aware of anybody who's looking 5 years out, but they certainly have the ability to do that. So on the proper application for those renewals, the commission, based on statute, shall renew the license unless the commission finds that that licensee is no longer qualified to hold a license. And the standards for qualification, you see the major ones highlighted here on the last bullet. They must demonstrate by clear and convincing evidence their financial stability, integrity and responsibility, integrity of financial backers, good character, honesty and integrity, and sufficient business ability. Under the current law, there is no provision or requirement to engage the public regarding the renewal process. In summary, many of you are very familiar with Maryland Lottery and Gaming. Some of you are new to the group, and as such, just want to hit a couple of highlights here before we wrap this up. We have over 350 staff members, very diverse professional backgrounds, that provide a variety of functions, both in our operation of a lottery and regulation of casinos and sports wagering, fantasy competitions, and other gaming programs. Combined in fiscal '25, our contributions to the state of Maryland were over $1.58 billion. Many of the beneficiaries you see listed there from across all 3 sectors. And as I said earlier, we are on pace to exceed in fiscal '26 the combined contributions for all 3 sectors. With that, I will then conclude our remarks and open it up for questions.
Thank you so much for the thorough presentation, and just so that we can become better acquainted with them, and thank you so much, Director Martin. If your 2 colleagues can also take a moment to introduce themselves and their roles, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Good.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Craig Lindsay. My role is the Deputy Director and the Chief Operating Officer.
I'm Dr. Jennifer Beskett. I'm the Director of Legislation and Policy. I know some of you from my previous role with the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, where I also did legislation for them as well.
Great. It's wonderful to work with all of you, and looking forward to this discussion, starting with Delegate Hornberger, who had his button on first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I wanted to focus in on the sports prediction market and some of the recent updates. So it looks like as of yesterday in a Massachusetts court, there was an injunction that was put on Kashi, which is a prediction market purveyor. I know that we've discussed this in some of our prior presentations in the past year. There seems to be sort of some crossover between sports betting on a prediction market platform and then commodity trading on other decision making. So my question to you is, if you could kind of explain to the committee, do you see, even if this ruling going forward precludes prediction markets from doing sports betting, will it still be permissible for them to do prediction betting in other arenas outside of sports, is my first question. And then I had some questions about taxation on what's left over in the prediction market. So if you could address that one first, and then I'll do a follow-up.
Okay, good. Thank you for the question. I'll be a little guarded because we are in active litigation with Kalshi.
Of course.
And if you're not familiar with that, we sent a cease and desist letter in April of '25 to Kalshi, Robinhood, and Crypto.com because we perceived that their offering of sports wagering crossed the line and was qualified as sports betting here in the state of Maryland. And in order to offer sports betting, you must be licensed to do that. And none of the three were. So we sent them a cease and desist. They countered with a lawsuit in federal court. They were coming off of wins in Nevada and New Jersey, and they didn't win in Maryland. So the Maryland judge found in our favor. It then is an appeal, and that's where we are today. I'm expecting that ruling to come very, very soon. You mentioned Massachusetts, and I think it's important because Massachusetts took an initiative where they sued Kalshi first. And they sued them in state court, which kind of changed the dynamic. And you're right, within the last 24 hours, the Massachusetts courts have supported their gaming regulators. And Kalshi, I believe they have till Friday to come up with whether they're going to abide by that rule or not. Right. As far as we're concerned, prediction markets can operate, and they do, in the state of Maryland on who wins the Oscars, on future prices, on whatever. But the minute they cross that line and get into, oh, by the way, is Denver going to win beat the spread this week? The minute they cross the line into sports, that's where we come down and say stop.
Okay.
You can't do that here. And we have the momentum with a number of other states around the country, and I think we'll see this play out. So to answer your question, we don't have a problem with the production markets existing in the state. Just don't cross the line into the sports. And when you do, you need to be licensed. And if you're not going to be licensed, and to that point, you didn't ask it, so let me share too much maybe. FanDuel and DraftKings have been licensed, and they offer sports wagering within the state of Maryland. They have both, as well as Fanatics, so all of the major players have now hedged their bets, pardon the pun, to offer prediction markets because they don't know how this thing's going to play out.
Correct. Yeah, that's my follow-on.
And they have all three. The ones that are currently licensed as sports books have said, we will not offer sports on our prediction market platforms in states we are regulated. So they are honoring that.
Okay.
It's the Kalshis, the Robinhoods, the Cryptos that have decided not to do that.
Yeah, so, and then my follow-on to that is just a question of the regulatory scheme. So if the courts do determine that the regulation markets can be fully under commodities trading, there's a tax rate that goes associated with that on an income basis. At that point in time, would you no longer have say over these prediction market outfits that are operating purely outside of sports? So I guess where is the line where this is just purely a comptroller office, function? You're paying capital gains or income tax on your prediction market wins or losses versus I'm spilling over into the sporting and gaming arena.
Yeah. We have not talked to the comptroller's office or anyone else. Obviously, it's still premature. But yes, we're going to draw the line around sports.
Okay.
What happens outside of that is really not our responsibility.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Delegate. We'll go to Delegate Roberson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here. And I kind of wanted to continue Delegate Hornberger's line of thought just because I was thinking the same thing, especially when it comes to NCAA in particular. And I know if you all saw that the president recently wrote a letter, president of NCAA wrote a letter to CFTC in particular asking them to cease and desist when it comes, allowing for those markets to stop when it comes to prediction markets and allowing that. And really, since I know that's outside of your purview, just because it is a CFTC issue, my question is, what are we as a state, especially when it comes to these student athletes, doing to assist them? I know we're thinking about those who are betting, but how are we, I guess, monitoring those, especially those that attend our state universities, to ensure that they don't get trapped up? And we've seen the court cases that are coming before the federal government now, a DOJ bringing those cases now. And so trying to see, I know we have the implementation for those who have chronic gambling problems and issues, and I saw your presentation covered that, but I'm specifically focused on the student athletes in particular, and would love to see how we can help those in that situation.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but thank you for the question. We were one of the early adopters, and again, I don't recall the date, but it would have been around the same time we did the cease and desist. The NCAA asked that at that point that betting lines on players, college players, collegiate players, be taken off the prop bets. You know, how many rebounds, how many points, how many assists. Because of the undue influence and hardship it provided them physically and emotionally in class. So we were quick to jump on that and advocate, and we took off our sports books in Maryland and said you cannot offer prop bets on collegiate activities. Save that for the pros. So we had quick compliance from our regulated market providers on that. We also work hand in hand with a number of sports integrity firms who are monitoring activities, which is how some of these stories come to light when you see activities being shown under a spotlight. And so we rely on them to monitor the activity in the marketplace. And when they find something of suspicion, they bring it to our attention. And then we work with the potential partner on that, whether it be at BetMGM or a FanDuel or DraftKings or whomever, to see what we can about working with that. Responsible gaming is always in the forefront. We can provide services, but we can't regulate their activities. We can only make things available to them. So I'm very confident that we're addressing it as many fronts as we can, but it is a constant source of challenge. I appreciate the question, and I don't know that we're there with a final answer yet, but we're certainly making steps.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Ebersol is next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of questions, but let's do prediction markets first. You talked about drawing a line when people step over it. What's your feeling about us moving that line to, and we're always looking for sources of revenue here, and these people are making money on prediction markets rather than just standard taxation, treating them more like a sports wagering platform of sorts and regulating them and making them actually become, established in the state before they begin. It's more work for you, I know, but this is, to me, in my mind, and you can correct me because you have better sense, this is not that different than sports wagering. This is wagering on things, outcomes of things, how long somebody's going to sing the national anthem or something like that.
Right.
So my question is, what are your thoughts on expanding your purview?
We have had conversations, and I know other jurisdictions have as well, with these entities saying all you need to do is come over to the legal side and you can run your sports books. Right. And the prediction market folks have been hesitant to do that. They're saying, no, thank you, we're fine where we are, because they don't want the regulation. That's why they're unregulated. But I'd be fine if they wanted to come in and make an application and brought them in as a sports wagering sports book, and we would get that revenue.
So I didn't. My question wasn't real clear. I'm talking about you moving over into prediction markets and actually us regulating them. In other words, people who are
right,
groups that are running this, us saying you're outside of sports, but we're still going to regulate you.
Well, I'll tell you what, if they're not willing to do the sports wagering part, I can't imagine their willingness to do it across their entire platform.
But we can make them willing, is my point. I mean, we can establish.
Yeah, and then I think they're going to hide.
Tells me part of the answer to your question.
Yeah, they're going to hide behind the CFTC.
Yeah.
I mean, they're federally regulated. What are we going to do? They're going to laugh at us.
Okay. Second question, just pivoting a bit. We had a bill last year looking at the sweepstakes market, which operates very much in a money-making, although it doesn't appear to be, they are. We had a specific bill, but I gather that's House Bill 291 is going to take that on and help us regulate that. Is that correct?
Yeah, Jen, you comfortable addressing that?
Yes.
Thank you.
So in looking at the bill that was put forward last year, one of the things that we did is we expanded from just focusing on sweepstakes to all illegal gaming because prediction markets have emerged since then and other things are coming forward. We worked closely with our Office of our Attorney Generals and our Assistant Attorney Generals. And what we looked at is the existing language in the law in terms of any level of enforcement. And currently, law enforcement does have some enforcement powers when it comes to illegal gaming, but there really are no penalties. And so when you ask law enforcement to go out and enforce things, but there are no clear penalties on how to enforce that, it's tough. So we have submitted that bill, and the bill expands a little bit on what was submitted last year to add some of that enforcement language.
Okay.
And penalties, I'm sorry.
And what tools would you have at your behest to actually, enforce that, enforce your enforcement, if you will?
So we have the regulations. So if somebody puts an illegal machine someplace where it's not allowed to be, the officers could go in and investigate that. If they're running some type of game that's not under our regulations and we're aware of, again, the officers can go in and look at that. And so it's a when we spoke last year, we spoke a lot about the complications of offshore gaming and payment processes and all of the rest of it. We are not in a position to be able to tackle that, so we're starting small and we're looking at what can we do in the state with illegal games that are operating in the state.
I appreciate your honesty there. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate. We'll go to Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for being here, and it probably will come as no surprise that my questions are going to be about problem gambling as well. You mentioned the self-exclusion program. Do you know how effective that program has been, or how many people have been able to utilize that program on an annual basis?
Each month at our commission report, monthly report, so tomorrow would be the next example of it. We provide updated statistics on the numbers of people who are in all of our self-exclusion programs, whether it be for lottery, casino gaming, sports wagering. So we do monitor that month in, month out in terms of the numbers of people and provide that. You can check that information historically as well on our website.
Okay. Does it seem to be growing? Are more people self-excluding, less, about the same?
I don't know that I have a trend line as to what it is. Again, recognizing that by very definition, I mean, self-exclusion is another step in a process. And it's unfortunately a painful process for some, and it's a process that some people may never get to, yet they need to. So it's an individual decision, a personal decision. I don't know, and nor do we monitor. I mean, at that point, once they self-exclude, hopefully they get the resources from other people like the Maryland, University of Maryland School of Medicine Center of Excellence, and other resources.
Thank you. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that leads to my next question. So when you were talking about having your list of legal sports wagering, gaming, do you have any kind of community outreach where you say, these are the legal providers, these are the legal sites that you can go to in Maryland, and are we specifically reaching out to either college students or like making like an awareness campaign for the public so they know the difference between the two?
We do, not only on our website where we point people to those legal options. We're competing in a world where celebrities are promoting sweepstakes and other things. So it's tough sometimes to get through that clutter to get that message, but it doesn't stop us from not trying. So yes, every opportunity we have, we're educating people as to what are legal versus illegal sites, and hope that they make an informed decision.
Yeah, that's what I mean, like outreach, and not just relying on people to come to the website, but actually, doing the outreach. And then particularly with college campuses with 1 out of 10 college students having some kind of pathological gambling addiction issue, and it's growing, is like the University of Maryland, are they doing things particularly to help their students that have issues or have become issues, or help identify any issues with their students?
Yeah, I wouldn't know unless my colleagues do. I wouldn't know of any programs that the universities are doing. They wouldn't necessarily come to us, but I'd be more than happy to work with them if they do a program that, we would certainly want to and have in the past shared our resources to help educate.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, we have seen, Delegate Miller, we have seen 2 bills this session that are looking at studies on problem gambling on college campuses.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Delegate. We'll go to Delegate Hartman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. So my question's on the bill that would limit the amount of free promotional play. So right now, is there an amount that, is it unlimited? Like what are the parameters? What are our neighboring states doing? Help me understand.
Sure. When the activity first started, you may recall that you had the first full calendar year of unlimited promotional play. And all of the states or all of the entities, most of them took advantage of that. And then after that first full year, there was a 20% limit. And again, the states pretty well fell in, or the entities pretty well fell into line on that. So we've introduced this legislation to determine what the optimum percentage should be. And your question about other jurisdictions, they're all over the map. I mean, there are some that have gone to having zero, taking it all the way down to none of that promotional play being available. So we're hopeful that there's some landing spot in between there that we can get to, and that's.
So when you say 20%, is that 20% of?
It's an algorithm, Craig, do you know that? It was an algorithm based on what they had spent the previous year. So if they spent, I'm going to throw $100,000, they'd be limited to $20,000 in the second year.
And then that would have been the amount for them in perpetuity?
Then each year it rolls based on your previous year. So it's always looking back and doing a calculation and 20% of that.
So you said some states, now like our neighbor Virginia is putting casinos very close to us, correct? So what's the ruling in Virginia as far as free promotional play? Is that casino going to be able to pull our players away if we tighten the reins on it?
Yeah, I'm not aware of other jurisdictions because obviously they're in session as well and they may have pending things in their legislation.
Well, not pending. What's in place right now? Do we know what's in place right now?
I don't know what's in place in Virginia.
So we're not watching our neighbors. We're just coming up with this and not really conscious of, I mean, we're trying to compete with our neighboring states, correct?
We do every day.
Right. So
And
I'm
yes,
just surprised here we're doing this without.
Yeah, and that information was looked at initially several years ago when we put the laws in place. The initial legislation wasn't clear on subsequent years, which is why we've got the bill now to hopefully get some clarity to that so we can have something in place going forward.
Okay, thank you.
The Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I want to go back to problem gambling for just a little bit. And following up on the questions about the self-exclusion program, that is voluntary. What are we seeing in terms of people self-excluding and then removing themselves from the program? Do we have any data on that?
We do. And again, I'd have to get you the real-time information, but the reality is when people self-exclude, they have two options. They can self-exclude in perpetuity, or they can self-exclude for a 2-year process. And so after 2 years, they have to apply. It just doesn't, they don't just come off the list. They have to apply, they have to show evidence that they've gone through counseling and are in a position now where they can be removed from self-exclusion. So and so we do provide numbers on how many people are now coming off of the 2-year program.
Okay. So when you look at your monthly numbers for totals, do you have some sense of any attrition of individuals who are cycling off?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll find that when you go to the website and look at the details, you'll see that.
Perfect, thank you. And then in terms of the Problem Gambling Fund, for sports wagering, their contribution is the expired prizes so that someone has some winnings that they just don't claim. Is that right?
And that was a lot more viable in the early stages, Vice Chair. The first year, you may remember, in sports wagering was retail only. And so it was very likely that you would have expired tickets. People just didn't go back, they lost it, whatever.
Right.
Once we went to mobile wagering and the market shifted to 97% of our wagers now come to mobile, they get the information back on their account.
Right.
So the concept of expired prizes in the mobile market really doesn't exist. So when you look at expired prizes from sports wagering, it's really a function of the retail, the 3% of the market. So you're not going to see a significant gain from the casino side.
So sports wagering at this point, with most prizes being claimed, really is not contributing any meaningful amount. Is that
That's fair.
fair? Okay. And then what about the lottery? What do lottery games contribute to problem gambling, if anything?
Well, right now, again, by statute, that's all coming from the gaming side. It's all coming from the casino and sports wagering side.
Okay. But there is sort of acknowledgement on the lottery side that there can be problem
Oh, sure.
gambling
And
in
people
lottery,
can-
and you do the responsible
And people can
gambling
self-exclude on the
messages.
lottery side, yes.
Has there been any consideration of the lottery contributing?
Consideration, I would say sure, but again, we probably would need to look at you and the legislative process to determine across all gaming platforms what makes sense.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. We have a question from Delegate Wims. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good to see you again. I'm changing the subject a little about staffing. I wanted to ask, how many full-time staff do you have, and how many contract staffs or part-time staff? And if you don't have it now, you can get it to us.
Yeah, I mean, the vast majority are full-time employees. We have a number of contractual staff who do primarily our drawings for the lottery games. They come in a few hours a day and do that, monitor and oversee the integrity of our drawing for our Pick 3, Pick 4, the games that we typically draw on a day-to-day basis. But the vast majority of our employees are full-time.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you so much. I do have a few questions and want to thank you again for this informative presentation. I think for me and this committee, while we want to ensure safe and responsible gaming in our state, as well as making sure that the state revenues are robust for this industry, given our role in revenues. I noticed that you mentioned that we're down a little bit in terms of the state contribution in a few areas. Is there anything you can share about what's contributing to that in terms of the reduction in revenue?
I think if I look at the three sectors, again, lottery, casino, and sports wagering, lottery is in a positive year over year. And the benefits of that is when we have these large billion-dollar jackpots, all boats rise in a high tide like that. And so we've been fortunate to have $2 billion Powerball jackpots in the first half of '26 and one nearly billion-dollar jackpot with Mega Millions. So when that happens, that's why we're in a position now to have nearly 5% in sales and 8% in profit year over year for the first half of the year. I'll jump to the other good news story. The sports wagering, as I said, will probably exceed our total fiscal '25 contributions next month. So we're probably going to be a lot closer to $100 million plus by the time the year is over, coming from $90 million last year. So again, a very positive growth story there. Casinos are challenged because it's a retail business. It's people having to come in and go to the facility. And quite frankly, I think when you look at the illegal gaming options that are available, you look at that potential in the market, I think some people may be not choosing to come to a casino. And I know we talk to them every month, and they do a variety of promotions. They try to get foot traffic. And quite frankly, they're down a little bit, like I said before, than about 1.5% to 1.8% on their contributions and revenue for the first half of the year. I don't know that it's going to swing to a positive in the second half. I think it tends to be kind of static. And I don't know what the casinos can do. I know they're already doing as much as they can, but our role as regulator is not to impart on them how they go to market necessarily.
Thank you so much. And my other area of questions is in something that's been an area of interest for me as of recent, so I'm sure you're expecting this question. I appreciate you touching on it, is the casino license renewals. You and I and Lottery and Gaming have been chatting a bit about some of the requirements around the casino renewals, and we're talking about licenses that are worth upward of $800 million. And I think it's important that we have a lot more transparency and daylight around the process, public notice, and at least committee notice around a license being up. And even while we don't want to shake up the market, of course, I think we have amazing operators in our state, so I'm not insinuating that, but that we have a clear standard that is meeting Maryland goals. And so what I'm trying to understand from you is, while the letter of the law, it sounds like that is being followed, what more Maryland Lottery and Gaming can do to make sure there's a little bit more transparency around information that is being shared? I don't think I should find out in passing that a renewal is taking place, but that should be proactive information to the legislature and to the public with such a valuable license under the process of renewal. So I would like you to comment on that, please.
Yeah, I would think that within our structure with the commission meeting that we have with our oversight group, we can certainly entertain what options we would have to do that. Again, as a regulator, we are, as you mentioned, following the letter of the law, and there's nothing there that says as long as they are found to be compliant with all the regulations and qualifications, that we shall extend the renewal. So we would have to look at, if not a legislative change or recommendation, see what we could do outside of that would get that information out there. I mean, it is public information. People certainly have access to it, and we'd have to look at what things we could do above and beyond making that public information available.
Yes, I think exploring legislation in this area is something that I am very interested in. And adding to that, based on the requirements, we do have in other areas of the law, my understanding, is minority participation, for example, and goals that we have for casinos. And so right now, it looks like, since the only standard is financial stability and integrity and good character and business ability, theoretically, there could be a casino that's not at all meeting some of the other objectives of the state, such as minority participation and other objectives, that with the current way that the renewals work, it's a rubber stamp regardless of perhaps some other areas that may or may not be met. So if you can talk more about if and how there are any considerations at all around other areas of the law or requirements, if they're just even a part of discussion and conversation when it comes to the renewals, and sort of those other areas that may or may not be addressed. I think that's something that we need to make sure that we look at if we're providing, again, a license that's worth such a large amount, to make sure that those other areas are being addressed and looked at. Thank you.
We have, again, in our monthly reviews with the casinos, we have MBE metrics that we're monitoring all the time. So in terms of their participation levels with contracts and services, that type of information is monitored and managed and tracked on a month-to-month basis. In terms of more involvement with, you mentioned other agencies or other requirements. You may recall when we had the sports wagering, we asked for the sports wagering licensees to put in place a minority equity plan in terms of how they go to market. And again, all of the sports wagering people provided that in their initial plan. That was different than the casinos plan. The casinos initially, and particularly I want to say it was Horseshoe and MGM that did upon their initial opening of the door had minority equity plans in place. It's my understanding that in the Horseshoe situation several years after, that minority equity firm was bought out by Caesars. And the same thing happened at MGM, where the firms that were the minority equity partners basically were sold their stake in the property. So it has been put in place initially at both of the properties, or at least those two properties, several years ago. And I don't know, again, there's nothing in the provisions of the law that talks about maintaining that or renewing that.
And can you please remind us, in terms of minority equity, is there any left in any of the 6 casinos?
None that I'm aware of at this point. Again, the only 2, because this came after we started initializing licenses, the only 2 I'm aware of were Horseshoe and MGM National Harbor. And as I said, both of those have subsequently, financially, those deals have been acquired and moved on.
Got it. And this is my last comment, colleagues, or question. In responding to one of the questions, you said something that struck me a little bit along the lines of the role of lottery and gaming is mostly to regulate, which we certainly understand, and that is a major and very important role. But I want to ask if you can clarify a little bit, because when we have so much competition that's taking place around us, I do view a role of lottery and gaming is to make sure that we are competitive, to make sure that you're continuing to make recommendations to us that help us to increase that competitiveness. And what I mentioned earlier around those state revenues that are at stake, we want to make sure that we're doing all that we can for the revenues for the blueprint and for general and so forth. So I want to understand more of your mindset and your frame of thinking as a new chair. Is it you're regulating, you're focused in on that, or are we making strides and being proactive around competition when it comes to Maryland's gaming industry?
Sure. On the lottery side, again, we regulate that, or we operate that business. So we're taking a very proactive stance on product development, marketing, how we go to market, how we recruit various retail operations and partners to get that done. So I'm very confident that we're, of the 48 or so jurisdictions in North America, or at least in the U.S., we are probably the 13th or 14th in terms of the total sales. So I'm very confident of our positioning on the lottery side. On the casino and sports wagering side, from a regulatory perspective, again, our partners tend to do the boots on the ground strategies in terms of their marketing and activities. In terms of our competitiveness, I would say that the position we've taken on prediction markets is a good example. We were the early adopters in going after the 3rd state after Nevada and New Jersey to draw the line, and that's on behalf of our competitive standing here in Maryland. And there are other states that have followed, and we lead by example. So I'm extremely confident with the team we have and the stand we take as it relates to illegal gaming, to prediction markets, to those things that do jeopardize the revenue potential here in the state of Maryland. And we ask our partners to kind of meet us halfway on that and come up with resources that they have at their disposal to make sure that happens collaboratively.
Thank you so much, Director. Are there any other questions before we close out? All right. Thank you so much for your time and your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.